short-term stress to the body when we have the right formula and attitude and we're not overdoing it is actually rejuvenating and I will say anti-aging.
Sounds True One friends. Hello. Welcome. Great to be here with you for this live broadcast of Insights at the Edge. We will have an after show after the conversation that I'm really excited to have with the guest I'll introduce you to in just a moment. And I'm eager for you to participate in our after show by bringing forward your questions. So please feel free to put into the Q&A box whatever questions you might have for our guest, Dr. Elissa Epel. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Elissa. She is an internationally renowned contemplative health psychologist who has conducted pioneering research into how stress impacts our health all the way down to the cellular level. She has some pretty tremendous credentials, so take a listen. She studied psychology and psychobiology at Stanford University and clinical and health psychology at Yale University, where she received her PhD, and she's currently a professor and vice chair in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at UC San Francisco. But there's some important things to know in addition to her credentials. She is a very dedicated person on a spiritual journey, on a journey of wisdom, spending time at mindfulness meditation retreats. And as you listen to her, I know, as I have, because I've met her before, you'll feel her deep heart and her deep humanity that mixes with the tremendous training and research chops that she has. She's such an unusual and gifted person. Her first book was written with Nobel laureate Elizabeth Blackburn. It's a New York Times bestseller called The Telomere Effect, a revolutionary approach to living younger, healthier, longer. And she has a new book. It's called The Stress Prescription, 7 Days to More Joy and Ease. And this is a beautiful book. It's both accessible and deep, which I think is one of the hardest combinations to achieve. Elissa, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Tami, for your generous words. It's a pure honor to be here. I've learned so much from you and Sounds True teachers.
My sense is that you're a person who is dedicated to a personal mission, if you will, who has a sense of purpose behind the work that you're doing. And right here at the beginning of our conversation, I'd love to know how you articulate your own sense of purpose.
My first response was, wow, that must explain the urgency I feel about time, that I have to use my time and be doing things all the time because I'm so purpose-driven and care so much about getting certain things done. You know, I used to have an email header that said, so much to discover, so little time. And I took that off years later, just realizing like, that kind of stresses me out. That's like the timer on my, my minutes, my day, my life. So just being a very naturally, I'm going to say achievement-oriented person, although there's so many negative connotations with that, but just, having metrics of productivity and output attached to the mission I have, the things I care about, has made me both miserably stressed for a lot of my life. And that is probably kept me so interested in stress science for the last 30 years, just really understanding how we can live without feeling that, time is a commodity and our kind of value and our achievement is based on how we how we produce and how we use our time. And hearing Joanna Macy talk about, that mindset as being so capitalist, so extraction oriented, that I can't do enough and I need to use every minute is, it's a natural mindset that we've absorbed and adopted from our culture. And it's stressful. It's toxic. It creates the divisions we have from seeing things more as they are rather than as we fly by them.
So I get the sense of urgency, but tell me what it is that you really want the research and the writing and all the educational work you do. What is the effect you want that work to have in the culture?
So my path has been really trying to understand and show the world this tight, inextricable connection between the mind and the body. And so of the hundreds of scientific papers I've published, they're always both. They're always showing some angle, some aspect of how if we change the mind, we're changing the body in this way, or vice versa. And that's partly why I went into trying to understand aging and cell biology, the molecular basis of aging, because that would show the world that the mind matters, that actually, if we can show that mind states like stress are speeding up our aging at the most molecular level, telomeres, we can talk about those, then that would be a check, a point of saying, respect the mind and that mind body is one. And aging is a way that, we all care about. And so it's a way in. But once I checked that, and we had discovered that chronic stress states do affect our rate of aging, it opened up a whole nother door of discovery. So instead of just saying, I can sit back, now we need to, there's a lot more interesting questions. So I've changed my attitude about viewing, there's no kind of end to the scientific questions we can ask. But I think the answer to your first question is, what is my purpose? What do I care about? It's to relieve suffering. And it's as simple as that. And I'm at a healthcare institution, and, we have a lot of words in our mission statement, but it is to relieve human suffering.
Now, you briefly pointed to the telomere effect. And so for people who aren't familiar with that body of work, can you briefly bring us all up to speed so we're with you here?
So when we want to look inside our cells and understand how does a cell stop dividing and replenishing the cells in our body, like blood cells and brain cells, there are multiple ways. But one of the ways that we now really understand is it's called replicative senescence, which just means our cells can't replicate anymore and they get old. And the underlying biology of replicative senescence is that there is a protective cap, kind of like the cap at the ends of our shoelaces, that sits at the ends of our chromosomes. And that really has a very important guard job, which is protect the genes. Part of aging is this kind of wear and tear on our DNA. And these caps are very sensitive to the whole cellular environment, all the chemicals. So when we're overly stressed for too long, we're changing the messages that our telomeres are getting. And they're being damaged by oxidative stress and inflammation. They're getting shorter, they're wearing out. And what that means is that the cells can't divide as long for as many years. They're losing their ability to keep going decade after decade. So it's a very slow way of aging. But it's how we run out of ability to replenish tissue when we're older. So this all kind of comes to a head, maybe around, I hate to say an age, but around 80 years old, we can start to reach the end of our telomere length unless we're taking really good care of them or we have really good genes.
Now, one of the things you make very clear and explain in a way that I really understood it is that there are different kinds of stress. we can't lump all stress together and say all stress is bad and all stress is going to shorten our telomeres. It's not like that. We have to understand different kinds of stress. So let's go there. What kind of stress promotes, if you will, healthy aging, and what kind of stress actually will shorten my telomeres and, dare I say it, probably will cause me to die at a younger age?
So we could probably spend the hour on the types and nuances of types of stress, but to be very simplistic, one of the easiest ways to understand stress is what we call toxic stress and acute stress. So acute stress are short-term stressful situations that we might suffer through, or we might get through, dance through them easily. Either way, they're really not going to damage us. Chronic stress, something like being a caregiver, being in these long-term stressful situations, jobs that are just too demanding, relationships that have a lot of conflict, financial strain, situations that go on and on. Lots of us have lots of them. Those are what we think of as chronic stress. And they're not uncommon situations. So then it becomes, well, how much are we floating through the day, recharging our battery, and living with this really difficult ongoing situation versus having it kind of wear a battery out by the end of the day. And if you think of it at the cellular level, that's wearing out the cell. There's not the restoration, the cleaning out of the cell that we really need when we're under such demand and wear and tear during the day. So acute stress can be harmless or not so bad. We recover really well. Chronic stress can be wearing over years. And then there's all sorts of things in between. But we do know, we've studied mostly the dark side and trauma and chronic stress. And we do know that those are the types of situations that are associated with telomere shortening. And then there are these, we can talk more about types of stress that we think are more rejuvenating.
Yeah, well, we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about how to deal with the chronic stress that I think many of us are feeling. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about, we could just call it positive stress that's actually good for us. What kinds of experiences are those?
When we think about physical stress, like exercise, it's the best and easiest way for us to understand a positive stressor. So we go through a big stress response and we recover. And during the recovery, we have a lot of reparation. We have restoration and rejuvenation, and those are a little bit different. So we're repairing damage when we are in a restorative mode, and we can develop restorative modes also from deep rest states like meditation. But the rejuvenation part is a bit specific to positive stress like exercise or caloric restriction. These short-term stressors actually can create a younger cell, not just repairing, but actually creating changes that make the cell more resistant to stress and aging. And so just to give you an easy example, we think about studies that have shown this in worms. And in these studies, they heat up worms just a little bit and find that the repeated stress of a little bit of heat creates a really robust, resilient, long-lived worm. And of course, if you heat it too much, you get a worm funeral. You've surpassed the ability to recover. And so heat is actually great for us. We now know that hyperthermia, repeated exposure to, for example, sauna, infrared sauna, or hot tubs, these create all sorts of positive stress in the body, repeated positive stress. That's both good for our health, but also for our brain and our mind, good for depression. So those are ways that we can start to take more seriously that short-term stress to the body when we have the right formula and attitude and we're not overdoing it is actually rejuvenating and I will say anti-aging.
Now, you mentioned heat. I think you probably know Sounds True published the Wim Hof method with Wim Hof. And many people at Sounds True, when they check in, for example, on our leadership team, we have 13 people, will describe their cold shower as part of their check-in. And, I got up to X number of minutes. And so I'm curious what you think about cold immersion as a positive type of acute stress.
I think that Wim has brought the practice to millions of people in a really beautiful way. He embodies this this attitude towards the cold, which I personally have my initial stress response is, please no, like anything but that. I'll take the heat. But I practice the Wim Hof method, and his view is to relax into the cold and remind yourself how good it is for you. And what that does is it reduces the psychological stress response, and you're still getting the benefit of the physical response to cold stress. So what he's been practicing and promoting has been practiced in other ways in many traditions. And it's even been studied in Western models. So cryotherapy can help with many different kinds of psychological conditions like depression and anxiety in different studies and big reviews. So it's not a surprise that repeated short-term exposure to cold is one of those positive types of stress. And there's amazing anecdotes, and now there's more and more data suggesting benefits of the Wim Hof method.